So I'm wondering if anybody has a strong opinion for or against having candidates do like a code exercise
Oh, good one.
or something like that when you're interviewing them. We're having these internal discussions at Cloud Posse, but love to hear some community feedback on that topic.
I'll just say I'll color the waters with my 2 cents on it. Why I'm so conflicted. I personally have skipped over every opportunity where they required me to do some coding tests and things like that. I was never good academically in school, and yet I think I've done quite all right. I think it filters out some great candidates, but it also saves everyone a lot of time because there are a lot of people who can also represent themselves very well on interviews, but they turn out to just not be a good fit. It wastes their time, it wastes your time. And look, I hate letting people go. It's the worst thing ever. And I also, feel bad for somebody who's just, thrown off the deep end and can't do well at the job. So I think tests if definitely serve a purpose, but I also don't know what is a fair test. And sometimes we have what we call these like contrived examples, which have no bearing in the real world. And are those accurately, helping them out? And we've gone through like, should we give candidates a real world example test, like by completing a GitHub issue or problem that we have on one of our pull requests? Well, then I guess technically we should be paying for that. Okay, I guess I can do that. But then it puts so much onus on us to find good candidates, the candidate issues on GitHub to give for that. And two candidates won't have the same test, and then that's not fair. So I don't know what is a good example. Matt, I know you have some strong feelings on it.
Yeah, my opinions are quite are usually quite opposite of Eric's in this. The one thing that we both agree on is that I think we both hate contrived examples and like whiteboard coding and all of that, because that takes into there are so many biases that can happen with that, just because that isn't real world, and that isn't how you do your job, and
Yeah.
it puts undue stress on you, etc. But some sort of a take home problem where you can work in your own domain the way that you usually work to
Do they
accomplish
have
a
to bring their
project.
own Amazon account, or do you give them an Amazon account?
Well, it depends. It depends what it is, but like you can give them access to like I mean, it's really easy to spin up like an Amazon account, but the question becomes is
What have you done in your past lives?
I've done things where so in my most recent past live, the way that we did all of that was once we narrowed down candidates and thought that they were good from the discussions that we had, we would usually invite that candidate to work for one business day alongside us in there and actually get them to work. So they would be granted access for a day. They would have some problem that was roughly around 6 hours worth of work from our estimate, so that they would also get like a couple of hours Slack and time to ask people and all of that in there. And we would fully say like, hey, it's okay to sacrifice features for this, but try to get something implemented end to end, including like your tests or whatever it is. And then let's review it at the end of the day. And if you have any questions, this is how we normally work, raise an issue in Slack, ping this person, do that, that kind of thing. And then you not only get to test their coding skills, but you get to test like, did they ask for help at the right points? What did they get stuck on? What did they, did they just not ask any questions, and then at the end of the day you were really disappointed with what they came up with, et cetera. So it gives you a lot more insight into how that person works, but it takes more investment for sure. You don't want to do that with 100 candidates by any means.
I can speak to what we do at field level here. It's more on the software development side. We really haven't figured out what a good pattern is for DevOps hires, but on the software development side, we have like a small little exercise that we ask the person to do. We ask them to time box it to 4 hours and what to prioritize on, what not to prioritize on. And we mainly use that as a jumping off point to start the interview, the more technical interview, right? So the first half of that interview is really just spent them giving themselves a PR, like doing a PR as if it was like, reviewing it's a code review as if it was a PR. and they have to walk through what they did, why they made those choices, that kind of stuff. And we found it as a really nice tool to kick off specific technical discussions versus like, making some weird contrived example on the spot where they have to think on the fly. Like, this is code that you wrote in your comfort of your own home, all that kind of stuff. Like, you should be able to walk through and explain why you did certain things. And we're very, very, very strict on the, like, listen, only spend 4 hours on it. If you don't finish something, that's fine. We'll just talk about it in generalities. But, we don't want someone to spend 12 hours working on some exercise on their own time. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Right. Then further down the process, if they get past that, and then also like all our kind of huddle interviews where we're doing, kind of like culture fit and stuff like that, then we do what Matt was talking about, where it's a full day immersion kind of thing, where we have a setup task that we know how much time it takes, what they should kind of like be able to accomplish stuff, and then we fully pay them, handsomely for that day. So they basically take a day off of their, take PTO and get paid double, like double dip for the day, essentially. And that's kind of our last option. It's like, listen, can you work with this person for a day? Do they ask questions at the right time? All that stuff that Matt was talking about. So far that's working very well for us, but it's been working on the software engineering side, right? Developer, I'm having trouble figuring out how to do a similar thing for DevOps. it's a little harder to kind of like, do you drop someone into your environment for the day, and all the potential risks that has,
Yeah.
So.
And inevitably there's a lot of, organizational, institutional knowledge there. And like, I think there's something to be said about trying to really distill their ability to perform the task in an environment they're comfortable with. To Matt's point, to me, like, we have a S3 bucket module. This was, how hard can it be to create a Terraform S3 bucket, right? Maybe that's an easy example to do. And then, we assigned that as a hazing experiment. No, I'm not kidding. We don't haze, but for developing this module here. And just to go to show, it's taken us so far 66 pull requests to get through this module. The very first pull request here on this module, I think had, 63 comments on it to get this pull request merged the first time. It took well more than 4 hours. How does one scope a task for what we do to something that's achievable and won't get 60 in 4 hours? And I don't even know any random ideas here for
we just have again, software development side, but we just have a repeatable one. It never gets merged. It never gets actually it gets PR'd at the end of the day, but never merged. And we just have the person does the same thing every time. And we know how much time that takes, and we've done it ourselves many times.
But then can't they just see the other PRs? You can't.
No, we kill it afterwards. And plus that immersion day thing that we're doing is we're there kind of pair programming with them the whole day. Like we're sitting there on the call with them. So if they really want to cheat on that day, I guess that's a pretty good red flag. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, I would give like positive points for that. That means that they looked for code that already exists instead of writing code. I'm like, that's +1 in my book.
It's +1 for them, -1 for me, because now you got to come up with another stupid example.
Yeah, that doesn't scale. You can't do a brand new exercise for someone every single time. Maybe if you do have the tasks like that are, but they're not going to be equal, and they're not going to be. So that's the hard part to figure out.
Also, I can say this for sure. In my past life, that we actually had people do unique tasks on their 1 day things, and but in our backlog we specifically had things that we would tag with like good interview candidate thing as we went through, and these were things that we just never got to. They're usually small in scope and whatever, and then what would happen inevitably is most people that would pass the test would then get to actually finish that thing once they got hired, because like they would never get through the whole thing in their interview, but you would get enough sense of does it make sense, and then they got hired, and that was like their first
Interesting.
week or week and a half of work was like finish the task that you were just working on.
That's an interesting thing you're pointing out there. It's almost like a trick question. And it really requires the candidate to start scoping the project. Maybe it shouldn't be to even pass. You can't even finish the task that you ask them. You deliberately give something that is probably too long to take, but they should be able to, they should be communicating, hey, look, the scope on this is actually a lot larger for these reasons, this reason, this reason, this reason, and that's actually really valuable.
That depends if you're hiring a senior or more junior. You can't not expect that from a junior engineer.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so maybe that's what we're going to be talking about for the next couple weeks or few weeks. I am so challenged. Like we had a 1 hour call yesterday in term. How the heck do you hire somebody that I perceive to be mid-level when you've only been working with senior players or mostly senior players? Like what's a fair assessment for junior or mid-level?
There was a Twitter thread on this actually not too long ago from Corey Quinn. You guys heard of him?
Yep.
He posed a really interesting interview question that has all correct answers, but a junior level answer, a mid-level answer, and a senior level answer. And it made so much sense to me. The question was, we're spending $1 million a month on a Kubernetes cluster. How can we save money on the thing? The junior answer was reserved instances and savings plans. The mid-level answer was, spot instances and scaling and whatever. And the senior level answer was, what the hell do you have running on the thing and what can you get rid of?
Yeah. Like,
and I thought that was really powerful to kind of have a known spectrum of answers for the same question that you're kind of prepared to talk about.
Right. Listen, or like, yeah, if one does this and then if one issues this to everyone at the company and then go back and kind of retroactively look at the kinds of answers you got and put them on a spectrum maybe on where they belong. I don't know.
So there's a service called HackerRank that my company's looked at. Has anyone used that before? They have a product called HackerRank Screen, that you can actually set up these kind of evaluation challenges or whatever that
I did use
are
that for
equitable.
Yeah. I remember using that for competitions, not necessarily for job interviews.
So I've used it a couple different platforms. When a couple years ago, when I was interviewing, and some of them were the take-home type. There were a couple of live coding exercises, and I've got HackerRank. We've got HackerRank at Brave, and I put together a couple of tests of what they've got for DevOps. It requires time to manage those. I'm just one guy at this point. So like the scale of, I forget who it was said, maybe Matt, that, over 100 people, it doesn't scale. But for like me, trying to hire one guy, that doesn't scale either. Just trying to manage those. You can throw something together, but I think I get more out of talking through things. One of the really important points that I got out of my experience interviewing was that the in-person, like live coding things, I'm just not going to do it. I have choked so freaking hard on like sitting with super smart like guys who were, and like dumb things, like parsing a string in Python. Because when your brain goes into that mode, sorry, you just don't have access to it. So I've actually talked to people and been like, yeah, but I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do one of those. I don't think it's blah, blah, blah. And most organizations have been like, I totally hear you. We absolutely give you the option, like take it home. And one more thing about the take home thing. I found for me, when I'm looking to work with someone, attention to detail and understanding how the smallest stupid ass pedantic freaking details will contribute to automation and make your freaking life a lot easier, you know, down the road. So someone who, like, if they give me a repo where it's in order, you know, there's signs and signals. You know, DevOps is a little bit of a black art. Or a little earlier, I was reminded, I guess, the story Michelangelo was interviewing for the job to do the Sistine Chapel. And he didn't bring anything with him but a pencil. And the guy was like, all right, what's the deal? And he just drew a perfect circle on the wall and got the job.
Yeah, that was really insightful, Eric. Any other additions on this, or like just one thing when Eric was talking about the hacker rank and he's done some of these things, I think it'd be kind of interesting if I could go into a service and review a catalog of interview tests or challenges and things like that, but I can pick what I think is suitable for somebody that would work here. And having an opinion, like, okay, so Terraform, do I want to ask every Terraform? No, but I want to go through and see, okay, we should ask that Terraform question, and come up with a custom exam for Cloud Posse, but where I don't have to come up with every, all these ideas and can pull from the library. I think that'd be interesting. Anyone seen anything like that?
No, but it'd be cool if they use the metrics from all the tests that have been taken, somehow like assign them to various like job levels, you know, because all that stuff is in there. And then you could get
hired as senior, hired as junior, kind of.
Yeah. You could be like, no junior guy ever got this, but all the mid guys.
Interesting.
I would not to be just always disagreeing with you here, Eric, but you have right now, I know for 100% that you have a list of several thousand ideas of what people could work on for these things, because I've seen the backlog. Like literally, we could go through and groom that backlog and tag probably at least 25% of those things as good interview questions that people could work on.
You're totally right about that. We do have a steady stream of issues, and maybe what one does is one presents a list. Pick from one of these 10.
That's usually how I've done it in the past too. You don't
necessarily so that's cool too, because then they can also, so not only, because I mean I want the opportunity for the candidates to succeed, and they should be able to pick what makes sense to them, and then they'll have the best ability to defend their answer and their work and what they did. It's not just something we shove down their throats, so to say.
Yep, exactly.
At my company, it's slightly different. We're trying to hire as many DevOps/developers as fast as possible. We're doing a policy that's closer to what Eric had suggested, entitled Cut Early. So basically, the candidate needs to be comfortable with development and be comfortable with explaining themselves, but we don't invest a whole lot in the interaction. Whereas it sounded like the technique that Matt and Eric were presenting was cut late, where you're interviewing for an individual to fit in your exact group. Whereas in our case, we're just hiring a whole bunch of random consultants who are all going to be working different teams. Whereas it sounds like the position Matt was advocating was more like hire for an individual for our group. So it's more investment.
Well, what kind of company are you at? A consulting company, John? Or what kind of? Okay. Gotcha. That's interesting.
I've seen also people that they hire like consultant style for like 1 month, and if after 1 month you don't fit, you just stop, and if you fit, then you become full-time.
Right.
Yeah. So I have a little bit of another opinion on this part, like especially if it's FTE roles. You're doing both yourself and your future potential candidates like a real big disservice if you're not thinking through, like if it's just like, well, I'm going to hire someone, and if they don't work out after 2 months, then I'm just going to get rid of them. That's like that's really not a fair like position to look at it. I mean, switching a career, particularly in like full-time like employees, is disruptive to your life. It's, something where you change a lot of things. You might have to rearrange childcare things and health insurance and all these things along
Developers
that.
are pets. They're not cats.
Yeah, exactly. So don't just be like, if it doesn't work out, I'll get rid of them in 2 months. You do a better job of finding the right person for that thing. And it also affects your business. It's distracting, and it takes a lot of time and effort to hire, whether you're doing it rapid fire or you're doing a better job. All of those take a long time. So
Onboarding
making
is
the wrong decision also takes a lot longer over time.
Not only that, but you cannot underestimate the amount of damage that a poor developer can do in just a short amount of time.
Yeah. I mean that too, but
you end up spending more time just rewinding problems than getting.
Well, and to the team, people have to embrace a new person, help ramp them up, and the team will get fatigued with that as well, over and over again. So there's a lot there to consider.
Yeah, it's going to be a reputational hit too. I mean, this is a pretty small world, and if if this guy that you spit out after 3 weeks or whatever goes to KubeCon and starts talking to people about, man, they did not, they just kind of spit me out like I was cattle. That this is a pretty small world.
Yeah, especially if a lot of people start talking about that.
At the same time, a lot of companies don't have a nice enough reputation. Especially dev right now, it's a hot market. If your company doesn't have a higher reputation or doesn't pay above market salaries, I don't see why people would spend a lot of energy getting interviewed at your company. So it's a trade-off, because I'm also with Eric's side. I'm totally allergic to those long assignments, and that's why I'm a consultant, I guess. Just pay me for my work and that's it.
Hey, Cloud Posse needs consultants, and reach out.